Are we in, Beth?
Yes. Hi, everybody.
Fantastic. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Community Conversations. For those who don't know, I'm Timmy Nelson, and I am at the Chester County Community Foundation. I serve as the Outreach Advisor. Today, we're going to have 4 uniquely qualified individuals to talk about our topic today, and our topic is a conversation with Latinos on race. Today's facilitator is going to be Natalie Ortega-Moran. And just to introduce Natalie, Natalie is a professor at Villanova University. Additionally, she's a board member at the Chester County Community Foundation and also a contributing member of our governance and nominating committee. So Natalie, with that, I'll turn things over to you.
Well, welcome everybody. It's so good to see you. I see some familiar faces, and it's great to have you all here to learn a little bit more about what we are going to present. And before we get started, we want to start off with this music video entitled Brown Power by Zeshan B. And after the video, we will come together to maybe discuss some of your thoughts and impressions upon seeing the video.
They shattered many a tribe of our brothers and sisters and dragged them across forsaken trails. They rounded up bare and shackled feet ashore to build this nation. They drew unseen lines to claim our land. But we have come so far. Our eyes have seen the sunken kingdoms of the past and the sky-high urban jungles of the future. Our ears have ached from the moaning, distressful cry of doomed souls. And now, in the darkest of night before the dawn, our souls are palpitating at this loud rumbling under our worn and weary feet. That boisterous shaking is none other than the electrifying current of what's to come next. We've been marching so long, wore our feet down to the bone, but we ain't tired, no, got soul for miles, yeah, from Karachi to Michoacan, we come so far, yeah, we keep it loud, and we rising higher, yeah, oh, higher, 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 we've been paying our dues, working hard just to prove that our lives matter, yeah, and our dreams don't shatter, 'cause I know that we're not alone, 'cause now we find a place to call our own, so raise your hands to the rafters, yeah, higher, 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 brown power, from the streets to City Hall, brown power, the writing's on the wall, yeah, what you fighting for, 'cause we about to take no more from the ivory tower, brown power,
So, does anybody have any first impressions? Have you heard that video or seen the video or heard that song before? And do you have any impressions, first thoughts? I will model, as I do with my students. And I will say that I heard, first of all, I actually heard this song after
Second,
hearing.
because I signed into a Zoom that I'm also trying to.
I heard this song after hearing a podcast on NPR, and I started digging more into it because the words really resonated with me. Then I saw the video, and what I found interesting was that the video kind of conflicts with the title of the song. The video shows the struggle of a group of people who are distinguished by their color, yet the song implies power. So what resonates with me is that the commonalities that exist among this group of people is a cultural and can become a very powerful coalition if we unite. And with that said, we have three special guests with us today. They are our thought leaders who will be providing information, both historical and cultural, on what it is to be Latino. So I want to introduce Mayra Castillo. She's our coordinator of program activities for the CCIU. Nina Guzmán, director of Alianzas de Phoenixville, and Viviann Schorle, Director of Corporate and Foundation Relations for Westchester University Foundation.
Timmy? Well,
Just as a reminder, these are our sponsors for our programming. So I want to make sure we recognize our sponsors each and every time we do one of these programmings. And if you want to go to the next slide, Beth, please. Also, ground rules. We recognize our conversations sometimes maybe have different thoughts, may spark different thoughts in each one of us. But we want to hear your ideas, we want to hear your thoughts, but we also ask people to take a look at these notes here. Respect is always something, no matter what, and no matter what the situation be, we want to be respectful to each other. And the bottom line is that we want to tackle the issues, not the people. Our intent is to talk about things that are somewhat controversial and to make sure we understand better so we move forward. And the hope is that once this session concludes today, that we will have a better understanding of world issues, world concerns, and how they impact people that we live with every day. We want to discuss what sometimes is considered to be the undiscussable. Next slide.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and Mayra and Nina.
Oh, yeah. See ya.
Can you guys hear me? Mayra and Nina, we're ready to go, I think.
Adelante, Mayra. Is Mayra on?
Yes.
Adelante, Mayra.
Did we lose Mayra? If not, Nina, if you can get started, that'd be great.
Okay. All right, so hi, everybody. It's an honor to be here. Again, I'm Nina Guzmán from Alianzas. And Mayra, at any time, I'm following your lead on this, but that's okay. As soon as you're ready to jump in, just let me know.
Sorry, I'm back. I have a computer issue with my phone.
Awesome. Go ahead, Mayra. I will follow your lead and partner with you on this.
Okay, so the Latino legacy. So there's a few facts on this slide that we wanted to share with you. The Latino legacy is long, since before the U.S. was settled. We have to remember, for example, that there were parts of Texas, California, New Mexico that were part of the U.S. before the U.S. was even settled. So the U.S. freedom was actually also won with Hispanic soldiers, again, because of those Hispanics/Mexicans that were remaining in the Southwest. And recently we were having a discussion about the celebration of Memorial Day, for example, in Kennett Square, where, you know, people seem to think of soldiers as U.S. white soldiers. We don't have a large population in the Northeast now of soldiers that are well known, but we know that there are many soldiers that are recent veterans of the recent wars, but we go far back to the beginning of what was between the 13 colonies and the South. Latinos make a large population in the US, and when we talk about race and ethnicity, there is sometimes misunderstandings. Race is about color of skin, and ethnicity is more so about cultural groupings. And so for us Hispanic Latinos, when we fill out the census, we're forced to put that we're white because that's the only option that we really have, other than maybe if you're from a mixed race, or if you say other race, or some of us, even those of us that consider ourselves part of Native Americans, and we have to consider that Native Americans are Native Americans, North and South America. So sometimes I, for example, fill in that box, and so I'm a mix. And so we have to be conscious of that with the census, there's sometimes data that can be misinterpreted because of the way that us Latinos, Hispanics are counted in the local census, but also in applications for college, in applications for school, in all sorts of data gathering. We're put into a box. And I always considered myself to be Mexican until I came to the US, and then I had to choose race and ethnicity when I first had to start choosing race and ethnicity. And I think we'll see the video later on. And the reason why we had this discussion today on Latinos and race is because we consider ourselves far more than race and an ethnicity. We'll talk about nationalities, for example, and how many nationalities there are just in the Kennett area. When we talk about nationalities, we talk about people in the countries that they identify with. So I identify as being Mexican. We have folks from Guatemala that came in the recent waves, folks from Venezuela. We have people from Colombia, from the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, El Salvador. There are so many different countries that people self-identify with other than that word race or ethnicity. And I even remember one time one of my nephews asked me when he was filling an application, and he was like, well, what do I pick for my race? And I was like, well, you really have very limited choices. And he is lighter skinned. So I was like, you can pick white because you're lighter skinned, but you could also pick other, because there's always that confusion, especially as newcomers. We don't always identify with what the US Census has us identified under. So many of us just prefer to say what our nationality is. There's certainly confusion for kids who are born here. Do they consider themselves Mexican American because they're born in the US, but they're from Mexican descendancy, for example? So like my kids, there's always a confusion, are Mexican Americans, and I have to tell them, you're really Mexican, both of your parents come from Mexican blood. You just happen to be US citizens because you were born in the US. So even to them, that is very confusing because they're born here. And so in trying to fit here, they're trying to figure out who they are, what they are, and what does that mean to them. We certainly are here in the millions. I sent a link that has an article from the US Census from the Census 2010 and 2020. And when these censuses are done, again, the demographic information is based on what you submit at that time. And there's still confusion from the people filling out the forms, as much as there's confusion from people who are reviewing those forms. The last number I'd heard was anywhere between 16 to 18% population, but I know it's definitely growing, and it's growing by the numbers. And it just seems like everywhere I go and everywhere I look, there's us. Recently with the devastation of the fall of the Baltimore Bridge, and the only ones that were affected were Hispanic workers. I recently went on a trip to Chicago, and I was very surprised to notice that everywhere I looked, there were Mexican workers, whether it was in a hotel, in a restaurant, anywhere I went, there were a lot of us. And I'm just surprised by how quickly this growth is becoming. And I know that there is certainly fear in change, but let's not forget that we have a long, long legacy in the Americas before the US came about. Because I also have to go back and look at my ancestry where we were Mayans and Aztecs. And I know my Indian heritage is Purepecha, because in Michoacan, we still have Indian Purepechas. So I go back to history far before the US was constructed, because I know where I come from and I know what my legacy is. And I know my worth both in Mexico and in the US. And it's still a big struggle, again, because when we talk about race, we talk about skin color, and I'm certainly not white. And many wouldn't consider me American because of the color of my skin. But I've always said I'm American because I'm from the American continent. And now I'm a US citizen. So I contribute to this country in many, many ways, just as much as I contribute to my own Mexican country, because I work, because I pay taxes, because I speak the language, because I have a culture that backs me up, and because I can navigate both countries and both cultures. So that's what I have to say about this slide specifically. Anything else you want to add, Nina?
Yeah.
Just one quick session. Nina, before you start, just a request for everyone on the line. If you're not speaking, if you could please mute yourself, because we're getting some background noise. Thank you.
I hear you, Mayra, and thank you for that. It's so important. And if this is a shock to anybody, I would love to hear it. I don't identify as a Latina. And there's nothing wrong with the word, and I respect those that I serve and do identify as. But personally, I say I'm Afro-Caribbean. I'm from an island called Puerto Rico. Really the origin is Boriquen. But for me, it's like the term Latino is putting everyone maybe in a whole big cauldron. There's so much diversity. You heard Mayra just now speak about, and for those hearing this for the first time, I know it's like, wow, there's so much diversity even within the Latino community. And I think it just takes away from everyone's story, like Mayra's story. And Mayra's story, and me being from my parents from the island of Puerto Rico, are so different. We do have intersections, but so I don't identify as Latina, and I am honored to be in that cauldron, right, with my sisters and my brothers in there. It's not that I don't mind. I've been called Mexican and all that. That's beautiful and fine, but it just takes away of our diverse stories and these interesting nuances within. Yeah, so Mayra, thank you so much for that. It just shows our diversity, even within our community.
All right, and with this slide, again, there are some facts in here that you can read yourselves, but as I said before, our Hispanic Latino history is definitely very rich, very diverse, and very, very long. We have immigrants, refugees, Spanish-speaking individuals, indigenous individuals that live here and have lived here since before the U.S. was established. Like I said before, I sometimes consider myself closer to my Native American cousins than to my Spanish side. I definitely look much more indigenous and native than I do white. I don't have that Spanish blood in me that my maternal grandmother has. We bring a lot of culture. We're a very cultural filled people from Mexico, from Spain, from Cuba, Puerto Rico. Each of us has a different cultural background because of the way that we were colonized, whether it was from Spain, from Portugal, even from places like France, where they came and they wanted part of the land. So there are some places in South America and also in the Caribbean where they have that mix of French because of the way that we were colonized. And like I said, I've seen anywhere between 16 to 18, 19% in the latest US Census population. But again, that's iffy to me, because when we have to say that we are white as a race, but we also identify with our own ethnicity, depending on how you fill that census, to me, that's a little bit questionable. I feel like we're in the higher percentages than where they put us. And you can see the flags and the diversity in the flags, because there are so many different countries in Latin America. And we don't want to be like, like Nina said, she's Puerto Rican and she's very proud of her heritage being Puerto Rican. I'm Mexican and I'm very proud of being Mexican. And while sometimes we're grouped into, oh, well, you're all Mexican. No, do not call me Dominican, do not call me Puerto Rican, do not call me Guatemalan, because they identify with their own culture, their own language, their own indigenous backgrounds, and I identify with my own. So we're very particular about our nationality and our background and how we want to be identified. So again, the fact that the US Census puts us into this little box that says Latino, Hispanic, it's very unnerving to some of us.
You're right, but Mayra, my assistant just said, you know, we always fall outside of a category. My assistant just told me, and it is true. It's so hard, you know, and my sons have told me, what do I check here? And now this is coming from my heritages, right? We are made up of 3 people, right? African descendants, Taino Indian, and of course our colonizers, the Europeans, the Spaniards. So, you know, we have everything in us, but yet it's imposed upon us, you know, one or the other. So I hear you on that. And so many of our folks, every time that's one of the biggest questions we get like, what do I put here on the census? So, and I was just asked, when is that going to change? Mayra, when is that going to change? That we have to pick one or the other. So if you look at that, it's white or black, right? It's in the issue of race. And then the ethnicity, a lot of times is, are you Latino or non-Latino? I'm sorry, but it sounds like we want to just do a process of elimination here. Are you or are you not? White or black, or Latino or non-Latino? That's what it sounds like to all of my folks.
And when you have no other option but to choose other or multiracial, again, it doesn't really explain what that other means, or what
Right.
that other is, or what that multiracial means. So when we consider the population that's Hispanic, Latino, well, that's great. But when there are so many more of others that say either I'm mixed or I'm multicultural, it's that other. Well, what is that other? And it's that other that is not necessarily being counted correctly.
Yeah, Mayra, and sometimes I think that other is just as insulting. Other, like, you know, the other. What is that?
We're those people.
Right, those folks.
All right, we can move on to the next slide.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for letting me be part of this conversation. I have gotten the honor to hang out with Nina and Mayra before, so I'm in very good company. And thank you for letting us share our stories, because our stories are completely different. Again, even though we identify as brown, I did like the video because the brown is so diverse, skin tones, backgrounds, and even in between the 3 of us. I'm a first generation, half Peruvian, half Argentinian. My parents immigrated to New York in the 60s, which is a completely different time and immigration process as it is today. And my kids and I have had the same conversations about what do they put now that they're 17 and 19 and are starting to vote, have voted and are filling out more adult responsibility type forms. You know, what kind of things do they put on their forms? And I'm like 49% Native American, which says a lot about, the rest is some sort of European descent and how I live in both of those worlds, because I look a certain way and yet my DNA is formed from both worlds. So I just wanted to share a little bit about that. And a lot of these are some of the conversations I have at my own kitchen table. I do identify as Latina. I have had my kids not fill out anything, but literally cross every other and put brown on the form. That's what they decide, particularly my son decided to do. So yes, and in learning a little bit about today, I found a treaty that was very eye-opening to me, and I'll share a little bit about that. But in this, slide, there's a lot of history here. And I wanted to share, just like Mayra said, before 1513, we were here 4,000 years before that, and probably 10,000 years before that. So I always want to look at this slide as saying that there were cultures here before 1513. In fact, in 1519, there was the Aztecs had their capital city with 250,000 people living in that, what is now modern day Mexico City, which was larger than any European city at the time. So there is rich cultures that were here 4,000 years before this early Spanish explorers reached America. So I wanted to go there. Nina, I don't know if you want to go to your next point, but I have I have the 1947. I want to talk a little bit about the Mexican segregation, but I wanted to give you a chance.
Obviously, I'm looking at the 1917 to 1924 Puerto Ricans granted U.S. citizenship. And that is true, but the way it looks there is like, oh, we finally gave y'all what you wanted. And it's not really like that. We are still a colonized country because we are a U.S. territory. I say that with a heavy heart, but it is the truth. We're the only Latinos, right, that are automatically citizens. So we had to be citizens because we are territory of the US. So everything comes with a price. And I just wanted just that alone like that. When you just see that, it's like, oh, y'all, but there's a price to pay for that citizenship. Yeah, we are, US law does, federal law, sorry, does apply to Puerto Rico, even though we have a governor, okay? But guess what? No voting representation in the US Congress, okay? So that's really important to know and see how we in this country consider our territories. We have other territories and not enough is said about, that relationship. And so, yeah, that's why my parents were one of the, that Puerto Rican diaspora in New York back in the 50s, forced to leave their country when the U.S. economy is imposed upon a small island like Puerto Rico, and basically can't trade on our own. And we are dependent upon everything going through the U.S. first. So everything over there costs tons of money because it has the tariffs that go through. We have to pay double. So a lot of people say, oh, y'all have it good, right? Because you're citizens and there's certain tax you don't pay. There's a price for everything. So I just wanted to clarify that there's more to the story.
Right, absolutely. Just one thing to go back to 1847-48, which I found fascinating and I wasn't as aware, but there was a Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo signed in 1848 after the war between the United States and Mexico, when Mexico succeeded about 55% of its territory, which would include present-day California, Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, most of Arizona and Colorado, parts of Oklahoma, Kansas, and Wyoming. And part of that treaty, which may kind of tie into this idea of why we don't have other categories but white on the census, was that Mexican citizens were granted US citizenship as well as being classified as white. So it was kind of like we did not cross the border crossed us, but it also guaranteed the full rights of citizenships for Mexicans that were in the United States when that treaty happened, as well as giving them the ability to speak the Spanish language. So again, that happened so long ago, and yet these are still some of the issues the three of us have just talked about, and how we grapple with checking off that white box in census forms. So I just wanted to touch base on that. And then the other thing I wanted to touch base a little bit on is 1947, the Supreme Court prohibits segregation for Mexican American students. And again, this was Mendez versus Westminster family that moved into Orange County He had gotten a house from a Japanese American family that unfortunately had to go into the camps at that time. They had children. They were going to send the children to the local Westminster school district. They were told, no, you have to go to the Mexican school. Of course, the Mexican school was further away, very in poor condition. And the family, he gathered, Mr. Gonzalo gathered other families and said, no, we're going to sue the school district. And they sued the school district. They got the ruling in their favor about segregation and not having to segregate Mexican families apart from white families. They did a second round. They appealed that decision, did a second round. And when they did a second round, you know, several people joined on to their fight, the Mexican families fight. And some of them were Thurgood Marshall, who we know as a famous civil rights attorney at the time, but also the American Jewish Congress, the American Civil Liberty Union, National Lawyers Guild, Japanese American Citizens League. So there were so many people gathered together to fight that particular ruling. And I just want to kind of focus on the fact that we really do need to work together to make sure that everybody has equal access, particularly to education. So with all those people gathered together and wrote legal briefs on behalf of these families, it was a 7-0 decision at that time in 1947 to make sure that was not equal. And we were able to get that ruling in the favor for the Mexican American families at that time. So I just wanted to share that little tidbit because I thought that was a wonderful kind of fight alongside that comes later, of course, with the Civil Rights Act, that it wasn't just African Americans, it was many different groups fighting for the same rights of equality and high quality education. Nina, I don't know if you wanted to talk about anything else on this slide.
Good job, Viviann. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes. We can go to the next slide. And this again, so much history here. The one, when I looked through this thing, the one that I wanted to just is the Prop 187, which was as recent as 1994. Again, this idea of immigration has been a tricky one. You know, it feels like it came, we were here, then we were part of, then we are not allowed back in. So there's this constant fighting at the border all around the United States when it comes to Spanish, different cultures, Spanish cultures. But, you know, Prop 187, that just serves as a ballot measure which restricted undocumented immigrants from the state's public service, including access to public education and health care. And it also put teachers in a position and healthcare providers to report an individual suspected of being undocumented to the Immigration and Nationalization Services. The Prop 187 was not able to be enforced because of the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment has come up several times as I've read a lot of our history. So yay for that 14th Amendment. Let's hold strong to that 14th Amendment because it continues to hold the bar on how do we treat people with equity and making sure everybody gets a fair shake as much as possible, legally at least. Not always, of course, just because you have it legally doesn't mean it's coming full circle and actually happening on the ground, but it gives us some sort of space. So I just wanted to share that one particular area that I thought was kind of interesting. I don't know if you have anything else here, Nina.
Yeah, no, just that, it notes about when Puerto Rico becomes self-governing U.S. Commonwealth. Again, you know, that's, the powers are very limited and we can't even vote for a president. So that says a lot about, right, what say we have when it comes to, you know, legislation.
Absolutely. I was just at an Argentinian game against El Salvador 2 weeks ago. My family was lucky enough to be able to be there. So I also want to say that just because it was El Salvador and Argentina, when I was in that playground, in that parking lot with all my brothers and sisters, it feels like we're also like, this is us, this is our community, this is who we are. So even though we are all very different, when we are gathered together, at least for me personally, it always feels like this is who we are, this is my community. So I just want to put that out there.
I think the Latino identity is pretty confusing to me because oftentimes I find it in a little checkbox on a form and I'm confused on whether I should put Latino or Hispanic, but I'm Mexican.
As Latin Americans, as Hispanics in the US, there's a community that gets built regardless of which specific country you're coming from.
And our history is a history of African people, indigenous people, Europeans, conquistadores, all these different people colliding, many times not with their consent. So that informs all these loaded issues people have.
It's like navigating three identities. If you're from the States, you're American, you're Black, and you're Latina. And furthermore, wherever country that you identify in coming from. And that's a lot to navigate.
But at this point in my life, I actually don't identify as Guatemalan, and it's something that I guess a lot of like young immigrants sort of feel, where there's this saying like, ni de aquí, ni de allá, not from there, not from here.
In trying to blend in with the culture in America, I gave up a lot of what I grew up with. Maybe I saw it as something that was kind of shameful or in the way. I wanted to dress like my friends in America. I wanted to talk like them. I wanted to be like them, listen to the same music. I started listening to country music.
I got all these crazy questions like, did you come here in a canoe? And do you know what snow is? And do you live in a hut in Puerto Rico?
I thought my name was Spick until I was about 13. And that was my first awareness that race was an issue.
People say, oh, you look like a white dude. In some contexts, not in all contexts, depends where I am, depends who I'm with, depends whole lot of things. Depends what language I'm speaking, but however I look, when I leave my name, I can't get a phone call back about an apartment in New York City. And this isn't like 10 places I call, this is like 30.
And I remember telling a kid one time, I was like, let me tell you, the Ku Klux Klan comes here and they see your last name, you're going too, bro. You know? And the kids are like, what are you talking about? And it was like a big thing.
People generally, unless I speak Spanish, people assume right away, that I'm African American, that I'm Black. It's just one of those things. It may be the deep voice, it may be the color of my skin.
Because I talk white, I'm not Dominican, or I'm not Black, or I'm not Afro-Latina, or whoever people perceive me as of being. And that hurt, and that still hurts.
Because one of my daughters is lighter than the other, they had Blackness issues. And I remember my oldest daughter telling my youngest daughter that she was Black and that her hair, she said something, and I remember crying like immediately, like, oh my God, no. And I had to sit them down and talk to them about our roots and that everything that they learned from the family was wrong.
I feel like I wanted more of my culture. I grew up, there was a point I stopped speaking Spanish to her, and I still don't speak to her in Spanish. So I feel like something was lost, and I don't know if it was just because she was busy raising 5 kids and didn't really think about culture in that way and how I would come to identify myself.
Growing up, like this, as a young teenager, I told people I was Puerto Rican, which is completely, which is right. But at a particular point when I became a little more politicized, I was definitely more of a Black nationalist than I was a Puerto Rican nationalist. Maybe because the concept of Black nationalism and the Black liberation movement is so much more accessible. There isn't a language issue. So yeah, I totally was reading Malcolm and Marcus and James Baldwin and Huey Newton before I read any of the Puerto Rican nationalists.
Either you're Black or you're white, and if you're like kind of in the middle, you kind of like don't want to be in the middle. A lot of us want to be white, but we're still brown. We're still color. We still have color. We're still, according to what the institution is telling us, what race is based on your skin color. So you're like, I'm brown. So that's kind of like where it came. Like I'm not Black, and I'm not white, and I don't want to be white. And so I'm kind of brown, and this is kind of like a thing that's there.
If you are closer to being white, you are supreme. If you are not, you are less than. And to me, that's how I've understood it. And that's why I think it's very important that Latinos who look like me say, you identify as Latino, cool, Colombiano, cool, whatever else, but you benefit from light skin privilege. The fact that you have ojos claros, people want to fetishize that, understand what that means. However much I might want to say, oh my gosh, I'm so special because I have green eyes, you're perpetuating white supremacy by running with that.
I'll talk to a young girl, a young teenager, and she'll say, you know, I'm not white enough to fit into mainstream society. I'm not Black American enough to fit in that, in that faction of society. And I'm like, but you know what? You're the best person to be kind of like a connector between both, because in you is everything. And being Latino in an American kind of New World way is basically being a physical embodiment of how America began as we know it. So you're every woman. So for me, being Latino is being phenomenal.
Sorry. There.
Okay, Latinas ask for more. Well, when I see that title, and by the way, all of these things that we see, we'll feel free to challenge anything, and I'm going to do just that right now. So, as Latinas ask for more, we know what's behind this, and when we see these stats, well, is this really disheartening about inequities? But when it says Latinas ask for more, the problem I have right away is ask. I think that when we start to have to ask for something that we inherently should have, right? There's a problem. So, I'm, of the age where back in interviewing somewhere for a job, before it was like when there was, face-to-face interviews, you can't really see too much of that now, but it was more like you were in a seat of convincing somebody you were good enough and that, you can, that you were going to be just the right person for this, and kind of begging your way into these spaces, right? And so I come from that era, and I remember never even thinking about the fact that I always put myself in a seat of, let me show you who I am and that you need me here and that I will be an asset to your company. So that asking, I think right there is a problem. That's just my opinion, that we shouldn't have to ask for more. I think that we're in a place where we must learn as Latinas to learn to negotiate our pay and our benefits. And that is something that's very doable. Of course, there are some, I wish I could see this up close, but it's a little too small for me. But there are things like, for instance, one of these says, let me see if I can get okay, I'm just gonna bring it up really close up so I could see it. Okay, so this says Latinas are hardworking and ambitious. That's very true, but I don't know if anyone has this problem, right? That the word ambitious means bossy sometimes for a woman, right? And especially for a Latina, because right here, down here, it says beautiful, sexy, and loud are the most common adjectives used by non-Latinos to describe Latinas. So we have this thing on us, right? That we're loud, and so that goes with the ambitious and the bossy. How do we navigate through that? First of all, I don't know you all, but I don't appreciate, right, the labels imposed upon me. Of course, the Latinas are beautiful and all that stuff, but when we open our mouths and we're ambitious and we know what we want, there's a way of some folks, interpreting that, and it could be negative for some folks. But look at these statistics. They're very disheartening. We are underrepresented, and there's, there are a lot of positive things here. So my thing is, if we have strength of character, intelligence, and entrepreneurship, right? So why is it that, our pay rate is just, there's great disparities there? Also, there are things that some people say to us when when they say things about us. It sticks when we're in these spaces. And I'm just curious. I would be very curious to know how folks, fare in these types of interviews. Let's see, there's other things here that kind of stick out to me, and anybody, and I would love to know if Viviann or Mayra has had any experience in these types of, these labels that they put upon Latina women. They're very, very funny. Latinas lead in, and they say it in leadership roles, especially entrepreneurship. Through COVID, they were the leading entrepreneurs of building business builders, and even so the Small Business Administration, that's just national and very well-known organization to help small businesses. They actually created a branch just for Latina women. So girls, get on this, Google it up. I mean, it exists. So the government's actually looking to invest, because they know that the Latina women are powerhouses. So with all of that, but why are we still underpaid? Those are questions we must ask ourselves, right? I know that as far as in my organization, I see these inequities. And one thing that we did create was, a Latino leadership, Latino and Hispanic leadership, where we kind of elevate and equip our folks, because we really have to come into these leadership spaces unapologetic. I mean, even with our accent, with the way we dress, I don't know if any of you had this experience, but I remember that as a young person, I had to go into these spaces and I was, okay, I got to dress like everyone. I have to sound like other people. I don't know if that's your experience, my other hermanas.
Absolutely, Nina.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I air dry my hair so it's straight. I have given up on the coloring my hair. I am not about going blonde, because no, I just don't like it. I don't care for people to see my white strikes of hair. I happen to love it. I happen to love my skin. I happen to love the way I look. I happen to embrace very much being part Native American and embracing that. And the most I'll do is I'll do my makeup, I'll dress up a little bit nicer, and I'll straighten out my hair. So I look the part. So I look professional. So I look a little bit like everybody else. But I know as soon as I open my mouth and I start to say things that are real and things that to me are concerning, I can certainly seem loud for sure, aggressive for sure, too much for sure. But it's taken me years to get to where I am, to be able to speak my truth and to be able to speak for a community that maybe it's not even asking me to speak for them, but they're not able to speak themselves. So in order to help my community, I feel like I have to be that person that, unfortunately, to some people may be loud, maybe too much. But just like you, I've had to navigate many places and many places where I felt like I didn't belong because of the way I looked. I didn't belong because of my culture. I didn't belong just because I didn't look like everybody else. And despite the fact that in every place I've been, I have led groups, I have led presentations, I've been a boss and a kick-ass woman, but I've done really great things for the organizations that I've been at. And every time I leave, everybody remembers who I am for all of the things I did, and yet still find myself to be underpaid and underappreciated. And hence the reasons why I leave, because if you don't feel like you're appreciated for all of the assets that you bring and for all of the things that you can do, it's like, well, why am I even being here if I'm not being valued?
You know what? Every time I walk into a room, all the spaces that I've been in the last 25 years of my career, very different spaces, I'm always looking around to see if there's other Latinos, Hispanics, Indigenous people around me, because then I'm going to be making sure I bring them along with me. I mean, I'm always looking for who I can bring along, whether they're young, whether they're older. Who else can I bring along? Who else can I make sure that I'm making what I can do to make people feel welcomed and you should be in this space. This is your space too. So I'm very aware of that and have been most of my life, but definitely within the last 10 years. And now that I'm raising young adults, even more so. Yeah.
That was my question. Next question, Viviann, is like, how do we close this gap? And you both said it beautifully, Mayra. Unapologetic. I mean, if we go into a meeting, you know, it shows that we're trying so hard to fit in. And authenticity, even though some may not understand it or may look at you differently, it's always fares better because you are just who you are and you're not making any apologies for that. And you said something important, Viviann. I bring somebody along. That, I think, is how we can really do this. It's really in our communities, doing programs and bringing others along, mentoring other Latinas, and just, you know, bringing resources. And like I said, in our leadership academy, when we say leadership academy, think, well, we're going to put we're going to bring them into so they could look like little corporate. No, there were ladies in there, Latinas, that they had no status here. Okay, some our immigrant communities that had no status, and when they left out of there, they understood that their resume doesn't have to look like everyone else's, and that their lived experience, I would bet, in any boardroom that lived experience would be so valuable, because what sometimes they have to endure to come here, some folks are never going to get those skills and that resilience. And so it wasn't just it's not just teaching people leadership skills and how to negotiate your salary. It's telling them that whatever they have is of value, wherever they come from and whoever they are, and what they don't have, it's also of value. You don't have to have what the next one, our boardrooms don't have to be the same. So, and also I want to say that if we're going to mentor and we're going to bring along some folks, also it's placing people, holding their hand until they get to that place, not just giving them information, because our academy is not just about, equipping. It's saying, okay, there's a space here. Such and such is looking for someone on their committee to leverage power, right? In our community is actually, let's go together and mentor them into that space. Not just, okay, you learn some things, now you're on your own, you got it. Let's journey with them until we see our sisters be able to negotiate their salaries, until we see our sisters actually get into those spaces where they belong.
Agreed.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts just to add and finish with this section. One of the things that I've always loved about being in education is helping our students who have tried to go to college, graduate from college, get into careers, and now working with the Migrant Ed program, is helping those newcomers to understand that everything that they bring, their history, their language, their culture, everything is valuable, and they should not lose it in that way of trying to fit in. And so we encourage our students to speak their language at home with their parents, to remember their culture, to remember where they come from, and to not try to fit in with everybody else the way that we sort of try, to not give up that part of their identity, because it's very important. It's something that I learned along the way, and it's something that has helped me. So for students who speak one language at home, and we're also teaching them Spanish and English, now they're going to be trilingual, and that's very important. We need folks like that who are going to be our interpreters or nurses or doctors or teachers, everything that the workforce is in need of. So I've always said that I'm a door opener, because I've had to knock on many doors and open doors for myself. So I open doors and leave those doors open for others to come.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Mayra. Yes, so, there's all these stats, and, we're running out of time, and I want to make sure that they're all very, we could see the problem and we live the problem. But again, I just say that it is really up to us, that we, like folks like, like my sisters here, that we duplicate ourselves, right? And that we become I know we probably can't change the world right away in this whole national, less than equal pay, but we can start changing that in our communities. And we've seen that. And someone commented on, I saw someone really quickly talk about, I wish I could convince our board, right?
I was gonna say, we need allyship. We need allyship. Yes, yes.
Before placing that person, that woman that I'm talking about into a board, which we actually did, a very prestigious and important board of a nonprofit, I actually, because they knew that we were doing this program, they're like, yeah, we want this diversity, we want it. And I had to have a conversation with them first and say, well, see, I want her to be a good fit for y'all and vice versa. So we had to educate them as well. It's like, what are you looking for? What is the motivation? And we have to check ourselves. I know everything is DEI now. We're checking a box about how we're very, learning about diversity, equity, and inclusion. But again, there's no shortcut to this. We have to really journey through this from A to Z to make sure that we are mentoring folks into these spaces that we have to traverse as well, right?
And the spaces have to be welcoming. They have to be ready to be welcoming. And that takes some time itself. We could say we're welcoming, but when you're in that room, is that truly the way it's feeling? And if not, then, and people are willing to work on it, then let's work on it. But the space itself has to be welcoming and flexible.
And I want to know before I end this, there are now, and there's a lot of negative stuff here that we have to work through, but there is more awareness. Go out and look for these. Like, for instance, I'm a nonprofit. I'm always looking for grants. I actually found grants that said we're looking for Latino or brown and Black leaders to support Black leadership, authentic Black leadership, and that the board is diverse. A grant that says, hey, I'm looking for you if you're of color to fund your organization. And of course, the mission that they're looking for. There are people out there that want to go specifically. I don't know about you all, but in my lifetime, I hadn't seen anything so specific. I said, here I am. That's it. That means there's an awareness of we need to make sure, and they are obviously being unapologetic about targeting this demographic that look at all these stats. They know this. And some folks know this and say, I'm out to fund this because that's important that not only are we backing an organization, but that it is Black and brown led through representation.
We want to be respectful of everybody's time, yes. And the discussion among our thought leaders, as well as the comments made in the chat, are very much appreciated. I think it goes without saying that we may need to have a part 2 of this current discussion because we had an amazing amount of people turn out. Thank you very much. But we also have probably a lot of thoughts still that need to be expressed. So we can stay on if anybody has any additional insight or feedback that they want to give us about this particular session. And if not, we understand, we know it is a 12 to 1 community foundation session.
Does anyone have any questions or comments they wanted to share with our esteemed group of not 3, but 4 uniquely qualified individuals? Any comments you want to share?
Thank you so much, ladies. This is Nelly. I love my girls.
Thanks for being here, Natalie.
Thank you, Nelly.
Love you all.
Love
Bye.
you, Nelly.
Bye-bye, Nelly.
What you're doing. Good job.
There's some great comments in the chat, ladies, that I'm saying. In fact, just saw some thank yous and some acknowledgments and some appreciation for your frankness, your candor, and your authenticity.
And also, lastly, I just want to save the date for the next session, which will be May 14th on Get Out the Vote. So hopefully everyone can join us for that next session, and then June 11th.
Outstanding. To our facilitator, Natalie, to our thought leaders, thank you all so much for your comments today. The hope is that we have created additional thought processes for people. We've opened some eyes and maybe encouraged people to think a little bit differently than they did before, you know. And I thank you for your time, your effort, and we will tackle this problem as time goes on. And you've been a big part of us making sure that we find full equality in this great country of ours that is truly a melting pot.
Feel free to reach out with any questions that you might have. I know that our contact information is available through Chester County Intermediate yes, the CCIU as well, because that's where I work. The Chester County Community Foundation. So, you know, reach out if anybody has any questions, wants to discuss this further, and certainly looking forward to a part 2 if there is one.
Fantastic.
Yeah, if you see us out in the community, please approach and say hello.
Yes.
You all did a wonderful job. And one of the comments I'm looking at, thank you so much for this an excellent and enlightening discussion.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, everyone.